Victoria Chen's hand froze on the doorknob when she heard it. Her son's laughter. Real laughter. The kind she thought died with his diagnosis 3 years ago. She pushed the door open, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Marcus Webb, her janitor, had his hands on her paralyzed son's legs, manipulating them with surgical precision no cleaning man should possess. But that wasn't what stopped her heart. It was the medical textbook lying open beside them, advanced neuromuscular therapy annotations in the margins, calculations she'd seen only in her late husband's research notes. This man knew something. Something impossible. Who is Marcus Webb? What is he hiding? And how will one photograph Victoria takes in the next 60 seconds destroy both their lives? Comment below what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Monday, soon. 4:47 p.m. Manhattan. Victoria Chen hadn't come home early in 3 years. Not since the diagnosis. Not since her world became conference rooms and quarterly reports, anything to avoid the wheelchair, the medical equipment, the slow death of hope. But today was different. The Berlin deal collapsed. Her VP was incompetent. She needed her files from the home office. She didn't expect to find Marcus Webb in her son's room. The hallway was silent except for the hum of the elevator descending 17 floors below. Victoria's heels clicked against Italian marble as she approached Ethan's room. Then she heard it. Laughter. Her son. Laughing. The sound hit her like voltage. She hadn't heard that sound since before the tremors started, before the specialists, before the word that ended their world, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. ALS. Lou Gehrig's disease. Progressive. Fatal. No cure. Ethan was 9 years old. Victoria's hand touched the door. It was cracked open, and through the gap she saw something that made no sense. Marcus Webb. The janitor she'd hired 8 months ago through an agency was kneeling beside her son's bed. But he wasn't cleaning. He wasn't even close to cleaning. His hands were on Ethan's legs. Not just touching. Manipulating. His fingers pressed specific points along the calf muscle, the quadricep, the hamstring. Precise. Clinical. Professional. Feel that, champ? Marcus's voice was low-focused. That's the gastrocnemius engaging. Your brain's still sending signals. The pathway's just damaged, not dead. It tingles, Ethan said, eyes wide with wonder. That's good. That's your nervous system waking up. Victoria's breath caught. She watched Marcus guide Ethan's leg through a range of motion, flexion, extension, rotation movements she'd seen performed by Dr. Rahman, their $800 per hour neurologist. But Marcus wasn't Dr. Rahman. Marcus was the man who mopped their floors. She pushed the door open. Both heads turned. Ethan's face lit up. Marcus's went carefully blank. "Mom, you're home early." Victoria's eyes never left Marcus. "What's going on here?" Marcus stood slowly, wiping his hands on his work pants. "Mrs. Chen, I was just what?" Her voice was ice. "Just practicing medicine without a license. Mom, Marcus was helping me." "Ethan, go to your playroom." "But now." The boy's face crumpled. Marcus moved to the wheelchair, but Victoria was faster. She grabbed the handles herself, wheeled Ethan out, and called for Svetlana, their nurse. When she returned, Marcus hadn't moved. He stood next to Ethan's bed, hands at his sides, waiting. Victoria closed the door. "Talk." Marcus met her gaze. Not defiant, not apologetic, just steady. "I was helping him with passive range of motion exercises. His left leg was showing signs of contracture. And you know this how?" "I noticed he was favoring his right side. The left leg's been immobile longer. Without intervention, the muscle will shorten permanently." Victoria's jaw tightened. "You're a janitor." "I am." "So where did you learn medical terminology?" Silence. Victoria stepped closer. She was 5'6" in heels. Marcus was 6'1", but something in her carriage made the height difference irrelevant. "I asked you a question." Marcus's throat worked. "I've done research on Ethan's condition." "Research?" "Yes, ma'am." "Show me." He hesitated, then reached for a backpack she hadn't noticed before. From it, he pulled a composition notebook. The kind you buy at CVS for $3. Victoria took it, flipped it open. The first page was dated 8 months ago, the day Marcus started working for them. Ethan Chen, 9 years old. Diagnosis: ALS familial type. Symptoms: progressive muscle weakness, difficulty swallowing, loss of motor control in lower extremities. Current treatment: Riluzole, 50 mg, 2x daily physical therapy, 3x weekly. She turned the page. More notes. Detailed observations. Left leg showing decreased response to stimulation. Right hand tremor increasing. Emotional state withdrawn, possible depression. Another page. Diagrams. Muscle groups. Nerve pathways. Treatment protocols. Victoria looked up. "Where did you get this information?" "Medical journals, online databases. I use the public library computer." "Why?" For the first time, something flickered in Marcus's expression. "Because no one else was paying attention." The words landed like a slap. Victoria's hand tightened on the notebook. "What did you say?" "Your son is dying, Mrs. Chen, and you're never here." The air left the room. Marcus continued, voice quiet but relentless. "You hired the best doctors. You bought the best equipment. You wrote the checks, but you haven't had a conversation with Ethan in 6 weeks. I know because he told me." Victoria's face went white. "How dare you? 3 weeks ago he asked me if you were ashamed of him." "Stop. 2 weeks ago he asked if ALS was his fault, if he did something wrong." "Stop. Last week he asked me if dying hurts." "Enough!" Victoria's voice cracked like a whip, but her hands were shaking. She threw the notebook at Marcus's chest. He caught it. "You're fired. Get out of my house." Marcus didn't move. "Mrs. Chen, I said get out. Ethan needs... What my son needs is none of your concern. You're the janitor. You clean toilets. You don't touch my child. You don't diagnose my child. And you sure as hell don't tell me how to raise him." Marcus's jaw clenched. For a moment, she thought he'd argue. Instead, he nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." He picked up his backpack, walked to the door, stopped. "For what it's worth," he said without turning around. "He's getting worse faster than he should be. The left leg contracture, the increased tremors, the weight loss, those aren't normal progression. Something's wrong with his medication protocol." Victoria laughed. It sounded broken. "And you know this, how are you a doctor now?" Marcus turned. His eyes were dark, unreadable. "No, ma'am, I'm not a doctor." He left. Victoria stood alone in her son's room, surrounded by medical equipment that cost more than most people's houses, and she couldn't breathe. Her phone buzzed. Her assistant Berlin meeting rescheduled. They want video call in 20 minutes. She looked at the notebook lying on the floor where Marcus had dropped it. Then she looked at the wall. At the photograph she hadn't really seen in months. Ethan, age 6 before the disease, standing on a soccer field, grinning, holding a trophy half his size. She hadn't watched him play soccer. She'd been in Tokyo closing a deal. Her phone buzzed again. 15 minutes, Mrs. Chen. Victoria picked up the notebook, flipped to the last entry dated yesterday. Ethan asked about his father today. Said he doesn't remember his voice. I told him his father was a great man. He asked how I knew. I said because great men raise great sons. Note: research shows ALS patients with strong emotional support live 40% longer than isolated patients. Ethan needs his mother, not her money, her. Victoria's vision blurred. She walked to Ethan's playroom, opened the door, Her son was at his adaptive computer station not playing games, just staring at the screen. Ethan. He didn't look at her. Sweetheart, I need to ask you something. Silence. How long has Marcus been helping you with exercises? Ethan's shoulders tensed. Are you going to fire him? Just answer the question. 6 months. Victoria's heart stopped. 6 months. He said not to tell you. He said you'd be mad. And has it helped? Finally, Ethan turned. His eyes were wet. I could move my toes last week, just a little, but I could feel them. For the first time in a year, Mom, I could feel something. Victoria's knees went weak. She grabbed the doorframe. Why didn't you tell me? Because you don't want to hear it. The words exploded out of him. You don't want to hear about my toes or my legs or my physical therapy or anything. You just want to write checks and go to work and pretend I'm not dying. Ethan. Marcus is the only person who talks to me like I'm still alive. Everyone else looks at me like I'm already dead. Even you. The boy was sobbing now, his small body shaking in the wheelchair, and Victoria couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but stand there and let the truth destroy her. She had abandoned her son. Not physically. Financially, she'd given him everything. The best care, the best equipment, the best specialists. But she hadn't given him herself. Because every time she looked at him, she saw her husband. David. Dead at 37 from the same disease now killing their son. She'd watched ALS take him piece by piece. His legs, his arms, his voice, his breath, until there was nothing left but a skeleton in a bed, eyes pleading for an end that came too slow. She couldn't watch it happen again. So she ran. Into work. Into deals. Into anything that let her pretend she still had control. And she'd left her 9-year-old son to die alone. Victoria crossed the room, knelt in front of the wheelchair, took Ethan's hands. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, baby. Ethan pulled away. You fired Marcus. I know. He was helping me. I know. So why did you fire him? Victoria closed her eyes. Why had she? Because he made her feel guilty. Because he saw through her. Because he did what she couldn't actually be present. Because I was scared, she said finally. Of what? Of you getting better. Ethan stared at her. That doesn't make sense. I know. Victoria's voice broke. Nothing I've done makes sense. But I'm going to fix it. I promise. She stood, pulled out her phone, dialed Marcus's number. She'd gotten it from his employment file. It rang 4 times. Then, Mrs. Chen. Where are you? Approaching the subway. Turn around. Silence. Please, Victoria said. Turn around. We need to talk. Ma'am, I don't think you were right about everything, and I need to know what you know about my son's medication. Another pause, longer this time. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He hung up. Victoria looked at Ethan. He's coming back. The boy's face transformed. Hope. Actual hope. Something she hadn't seen in years. Really? Really? Are you going to fire him again? No. I'm going to listen to him. She sat down next to her son. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't check her phone. Didn't think about work. Didn't run. Ethan, tell me about the toe thing. He blinked. What? You said you moved your toes. Tell me about it. So he did. He told her about the exercises Marcus taught him, the visualization techniques, the way Marcus explained that even though the motor neurons were dying, the muscle tissue could still respond to electrical stimulation. How they'd been working on it every day for months, and last Tuesday during their session, Ethan had felt his big toe twitch. It wasn't much, Ethan said, eyes shining. Just a tiny movement. But Marcus said it was huge. He said it meant the connection wasn't completely gone. What else has Marcus taught you? Breathing exercises, for when my diaphragm gets weaker, and he's been teaching me about my dad. Victoria's heart clenched. What about him? Marcus said Dad was a neuroscientist, that he was studying ALS, trying to find a cure. Yes, he was. Marcus said Dad didn't finish his research, but that maybe someone else could. The words hung in the air. Victoria stood up slowly, walked to the window. Manhattan sprawled below steel and glass, and 8 million people who had no idea that in this penthouse, a janitor had just given her dying son something she couldn't: hope. The doorbell rang. Svetlana's voice. "Mrs. Chen, Mr. Webb is here. Send him to the study." Victoria looked at Ethan. "Stay here. I'll be back." She found Marcus standing in the study, backpack over one shoulder, looking like a man expecting to be escorted out by security. Victoria closed the door. "Sit." He sat. She remained standing. "You said something's wrong with Ethan's medication protocol. Explain." Marcus met her gaze. "How much do you know about riluzole?" "It's the standard ALS treatment. It slows progression by about 3 months, on average, and it works by reducing glutamate toxicity in the motor neurons." Victoria nodded. This was in all the literature. "But Ethan's not average," Marcus continued. "He has familial ALS, same mutation as your husband, which means his disease progression should follow a predictable pattern, except it's not." "What do you mean? Your husband's medical records, the ones published in the research study he participated in before he died, show a specific progression rate. Ethan's moving faster, 20% faster." Victoria's blood went cold. "How do you know about my husband's research records?" "They're public. Published in the Journal of Neuromuscular Diseases 2019. Dr. David Chen was a co-author on a study about genetic markers in familial ALS." She stared at him. "You read my husband's research papers?" "All of them." "Why?" For the first time, Marcus's careful composure cracked. "Because I needed to understand what's killing your son." The answer was so simple, so direct, that Victoria had no response. Marcus opened his backpack, pulled out a folder. 3 months ago, I noticed Ethan's tremors were increasing outside the normal progression window, so I started tracking his symptoms against the research timeline." He spread papers across her desk. "Charts, graphs, timelines. This is your husband's progression. This is Ethan's. See the divergence." Victoria looked. The lines matched perfectly until month 8. Then Ethan's symptoms accelerated. "What changed at month 8? Marcus flipped to another page. His riluzole dosage was increased from 50 mg twice daily to 100 ml twice daily. That's a standard adjustment. For adults, Ethan weighs 67 pounds. Victoria's hands went numb. "You're saying he's overdosing?" "I'm saying his body mass doesn't support that dosage. And riluzole has known side effects at high doses: increased muscle weakness, tremors, loss of coordination. Those are also ALS symptoms." "Exactly. Which means no one's questioning whether the medication is accelerating what it's supposed to slow." Victoria grabbed the papers, read them, reread them. Her mind, trained to find patterns in market data, in financial projections, saw what Marcus was showing her. The correlation was there. "This is..." She couldn't finish. "Circumstantial," Marcus said. "I'm not a doctor. I can't prove anything. But if it were my son, I'd want a second opinion on that dosage." Victoria looked up at him. Really looked. At the worn jacket, the calloused hands, the exhaustion etched around his eyes. "Who are you?" she whispered. Marcus's jaw tightened. "I told you, I'm a janitor. Janitors don't read neuroscience journals. This one does." "Why?" He stood, walked to the window, stared out at the city. 10 years ago, my daughter was diagnosed with a rare neurological disorder. The doctors said she'd never walk, never talk, never live a normal life. His voice was flat, factual. "My wife and I spent everything we had on specialists, experimental treatments. Nothing worked. And I was just a construction worker. I didn't understand the medical terms, couldn't challenge the doctors, Couldn't do anything except watch my little girl suffer. He turned. His eyes were dark haunted. So I taught myself. I learned anatomy, neurology, pharmacology, everything I could, and I found a small trial in Germany testing a therapy the American doctors said was worthless. We maxed out credit cards to fly there. And it worked. My daughter walks now. She talks. She's in college. Victoria couldn't breathe. After that, I couldn't go back to construction. I started volunteering at hospitals, physical therapy clinics, anywhere that would let me help. I'm not licensed. I can't practice medicine. But I can clean floors in a building where sick kids live, and if I happen to notice something, he shrugged. I notice. Why didn't you tell me this before? Would you have believed me, a janitor with a GED and an internet education? No, she wouldn't have. Victoria sat down. Her legs couldn't hold her anymore. What do I do now? Call Dr. Rahman, show him this data, ask him to review Ethan's dosage. And if you're wrong, then I'm wrong. And you fire me for real this time. And if you're right, Marcus's expression didn't change. Then you save your son's life. The words hung between them. Victoria picked up her phone, dialed Dr. Rahman's office, got his service. This is Victoria Chen. I need Dr. Rahman to call me immediately. It's about my son's riluzole dosage. Tell him it's urgent. She hung up, looked at Marcus. Thank you. He nodded. I should go. Let you handle this. Wait. He stopped. Victoria stood, crossed the room, extended her hand. I'm sorry for what I said, how I treated you. You didn't deserve that. Marcus looked at her hand, then took it. His grip was firm. The handshake of an equal. Apology accepted, Mrs. Chen. He left. Victoria stood alone in the study, her entire world tilting on its axis, and she realized something she'd spent 3 years hiring the best people money could buy to save her son. And the person who might actually do it was the one she paid minimum wage to clean her toilets. Her phone rang. Dr. Rahman. She answered. And for the first time in 3 years, Victoria Chen started asking the right questions. Dr. Rahman arrived at the penthouse at 7:43 p.m., his silver Mercedes idling in the circular driveway while his driver waited. Victoria met him at the door herself. No butler, no assistant. Just her still wearing the blazer from this morning's aborted Berlin call hair, falling loose from its usual perfect twist. Mrs. Chen. Rahman shook her hand, his expression grave. Your message sounded urgent. It is. Come in. She led him to the study, where Marcus's charts were still spread across her desk. Rahman's eyes swept over them, and something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe? Or concern? Where did you get these? Does it matter? It does if you're making medical decisions based on non-professional sources. Victoria's spine straightened. The source tracked my son's symptoms for 6 months and found a correlation between his medication increase and accelerated disease progression. I need you to tell me if he's right or wrong. Rahman picked up the timeline comparison, studied it. His lips pressed into a thin line. Who created this analysis? Someone who cares about my son. Mrs. Chen. Answer the question, doctor. Is Ethan's riluzole dosage too high for his body weight? Rahman set down the paper, removed his glasses, cleaned them with a cloth from his pocket, the gesture of a man buying time. The dosage is within acceptable parameters for pediatric ALS patients. That's not what I asked. Mrs. Chen, I've been treating neurological disorders for 23 years, and I've been watching my son deteriorate faster than my husband did. So I'll ask one more time, is the dosage too high? The silence stretched. Outside, the city lights began flickering on, turning Manhattan into a constellation of ambition and money and power, none of which could answer the simple question hanging between them. Rahman sat down. The standard calculation is based on average weight-to-dosage ratios. Ethan is small for his age. 67 pounds. Yes. Rahman's fingers drummed against the armrest, which puts him at the lower end of the therapeutic window. But ALS progression varies significantly between patients. The acceleration you're seeing could be natural disease advancement. Could be, but you don't know. No one knows. That's the nature of this disease. Victoria moved to the window. Below, the streets teemed with people rushing home from work, from dinner, from lives that made sense. Her reflection stared back at her, a woman who'd built a $2 billion company from nothing, but hadn't noticed her son was being poisoned by the medicine supposed to save him. "My husband kept journals," she said quietly, "before he lost the ability to write. Did you know that?" No. He documented everything. Every symptom, every medication adjustment, every side effect. And I never read them. Not once. After he died, I put them in storage because I couldn't. She stopped, started again. I couldn't look at them, but I had them pulled this afternoon. She turned. David's dosage was never increased above 100 milligrams daily, total, not twice daily, and he weighed 180 pounds. Rahman went very still. Ethan is on 200 milligrams daily, at 67 pounds. That's a 3-to-1 ratio compared to my husband. Mrs. Chen, I understand you're upset. I'm not upset. I'm asking if my son's symptoms are being caused by his treatment instead of his disease. Rahman stood. I'll order blood work. We'll check his liver function, kidney function, measure the drug levels in his system. If there's toxicity, we'll adjust. When? I'll have the lab courier here tomorrow morning. Tonight. Mrs. Chen. My son has been suffering for 3 months because I trusted you to do this right. So you'll send someone tonight, or I'll find a doctor who will. The threat hung in the air. Rahman's jaw tightened, but he pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke in clipped tones about rush orders and priority processing, and yes, I understand it's after hours. He hung up. They'll be here in 90 minutes. Thank you. Rahman gathered his coat, paused at the door. The person who created these charts, do they have medical training? Why? Because this level of analysis requires significant knowledge of neuropharmacology and disease progression modeling. If they're practicing medicine without a license, they're not practicing anything. They're cleaning my floors and paying attention, which is apparently more than I can say for the specialist I'm paying $800 an hour. The words landed like a slap. Rahman's face flushed, but he nodded once and left. Victoria stood alone in the study, her hands shaking, and she realized she'd just burned a bridge with one of the top neurologists on the East Coast. She should call him back, apologize, smooth it over. Instead, she went to find her son. Ethan was in the media room with Svetlana watching something animated on the massive screen. Victoria appeared in the doorway, and Svetlana stood immediately. Mrs. Chen, I was just about to give Ethan his evening medication. Not tonight. Svetlana blinked. I'm sorry. No medication until we get his blood work results. Doctor's orders. But the Riluzole? We'll wait. Victoria's voice was steel. That's final. Svetlana hesitated, then nodded and left. Ethan looked up at his mother, confused. What's wrong with my medicine? Victoria sat beside him, not in a chair across the room like usual, but right next to him on the leather sofa, close enough to touch. We're checking to make sure the dose is right for you, that's all. Is Marcus still here? No, but he'll be back tomorrow. Promise. Victoria looked at her son, really looked at him. When had he gotten so thin? When had the circles under his eyes gotten so dark? When had she stopped seeing him as Ethan and started seeing him as the disease? I promise. Ethan leaned against her, just a little, testing. Victoria put her arm around him and pulled him close, and she felt him relax in a way she hadn't felt in years, like he'd been holding his breath and finally remembered how to exhale. They sat like that through the end of the movie. When it finished, Ethan looked up at her. Mom. Yeah, baby. Are you going to stay home tomorrow? The question was simple. The answer should have been simple too. But Victoria's calendar was packed. Board meeting at 9. Investor call at noon. Site visit to the new facility in Queens at 3. She'd been preparing for weeks. Yes, she heard herself say. I'll stay home. Ethan's eyes widened. Really? Really? We'll spend the whole day together. What do you want to do? Can we work on my exercises, the ones Marcus taught me? Something cracked open in Victoria's chest. Of course we can. The lab technician arrived at 9:15 p.m. Drew blood-labeled vials and disappeared into the night with promises of results by morning. Victoria put Ethan to bed herself, for the first time in months, sitting beside him until he fell asleep. Then she went to her husband's study. She hadn't opened this door in 3 years. David's space. His books, his research, his life's work, all preserved exactly as he'd left it, like a museum to a man who'd tried to cure himself and failed. Victoria sat in his chair, opened the bottom drawer, pulled out the stack of leather journals. Volume 1 was dated 12 years ago, before Ethan was born, before David's diagnosis. When he was just a brilliant neuroscientist chasing a cure for a disease that would eventually kill him. She opened it. David's handwriting, precise, controlled, filled every page. Initial symptoms, minor tremor in right hand. Dismissed by GP as stress-related. But I know. I've seen this before. The genetic markers don't lie. I have 5 years. Maybe 10 if I'm lucky. Victoria's vision blurred. She turned pages. Told Victoria today. She didn't believe me at first, thought I was being paranoid. But I showed her the test results. Watched her face change when she understood. She asked if we should cancel the wedding. I said no. She asked if we should reconsider having children. I said no to that too. Because I'm going to beat this. I have to. More pages. More entries. Ethan born today. 7 Avs, 4 Aussie. Perfect in every way. Victoria asked if I tested him for the mutation. I said no. She asked why. I told her I don't want to know. That's a lie. I already tested his cord blood. He has it. The same genetic deletion that's killing me is waiting inside my son. But I can't tell her. Not yet. Not until I find the cure. Victoria stopped breathing. Read it again. Then again. David had known. From the day Ethan was born, he'd known their son would develop ALS, and he'd never told her. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely turn the page. Ethan is 3. Started showing minor coordination issues. Victoria thinks it's normal toddler clumsiness. I know better. The disease is activating earlier than predicted. I have less time than I thought. Need to accelerate research. Need to find the answer before it's too late. The entries continued. David's symptoms worsening. His research intensifying. His desperation bleeding through every word as he raced against a clock that couldn't be stopped. The final entry was dated 3 weeks before he died. I failed. The research is incomplete. The cure is close. I can feel it, but I won't live long enough to find it. And Ethan. God, Ethan. He'll face this same hell in a few years and I'm leaving him nothing. No answers. No hope. Just journals full of dead ends and failed experiments. Victoria will hate me for not telling her. But I thought I could fix it. I thought I could save him. I was wrong. Someone needs to finish this. Someone needs to find what I missed. Because Ethan deserves better than this. He deserves to live. Victoria closed the journal, pressed it against her chest, and she wept not the careful, controlled tears she'd allowed herself at David's funeral, but the raw, broken sobs of a woman who'd lost her husband twice. Once to death. Once to the lie he'd told to protect her. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Marcus Webb. Dr. Rahman called me an hour ago. Asked about my medical background. I told him the truth. He's threatening to report me to the medical board for unauthorized practice. I wanted you to know before you hear it from him. I'm sorry if this causes you problems. Victoria stared at the message. Then she called Rahman. He answered on the first ring. Mrs. Chen? You called Marcus Webb. I did. And I have serious concerns about his involvement in your son's care. Did he claim to be a doctor? No, but did he prescribe medication or perform medical procedures? That's not the point. Then what is the point, Doctor? Rahman. That someone without a medical degree noticed something you missed. That a janitor cared enough to track my son's symptoms while you were following a protocol without questioning if it was working. Mrs. Chen, I understand you're emotional. I'm not emotional. I'm done. You're fired. Silence. I'm sorry. You heard me. Send your final invoice. I'll have your payment processed within 48 hours. Thank you for your service. She hung up before he could respond. Then she called Marcus. He answered on the third ring, voice cautious. Mrs. Chen. Rahman's fired. I need a new neurologist. Do you have recommendations? A pause. Yes. Dr. Sarah Kim at Mount Sinai. She specializes in pediatric ALS and actually listens to her patients. Can you get me her contact information? I'll text it to you. Thank you. Victoria hesitated. Marcus, I read my husband's journals tonight. The ones he kept during his illness. Okay. He was trying to find a cure, before he died, for himself and for Ethan. Marcus didn't respond, but she heard his breathing change. His research is incomplete, but it's all here, 12 years of work, and I think someone needs to finish it. Mrs. Chen, I'm not qualified. I'm not asking you to cure ALS. I'm asking you to help me understand what my husband was working on. Because if there's even a chance he found something useful, I need to know. The silence stretched. When do you want to start? Marcus asked finally. Tomorrow. Come at 8. And Marcus, bring your daughter. My daughter. Ethan needs a friend. And from what you've told me, they have something in common. She could hear the smile in his voice. Yes, ma'am. We'll be there. Victoria ended the call, looked around David's study, at the books, the papers, the evidence of a brilliant mind that had burned itself out trying to save the people it loved. Her phone buzzed again. Dr. Rahman, Mrs. Chen. Please reconsider. We can discuss this like professionals. She deleted the message. Then she opened her laptop and started reading her husband's research. She had 12 years of neuroscience to absorb by morning, and for the first time in 3 years, she had a reason to try. The blood work results arrived at 6:47 a.m. via encrypted email. Victoria had been awake for 2 hours reading David's notes on glutamate excitotoxicity and motor neuron degeneration, her coffee going cold in its cup. She opened the attachment, scanned the numbers, then read them again slower. Ethan's liver enzymes were elevated, not dangerously, but higher than normal. His creatinine levels suggested early kidney stress, and the ribosol concentration in his blood was 43% above therapeutic range. Marcus had been right. The dosage was too high. Victoria's hands clenched around her phone. For 3 months she'd watched her son deteriorate, blaming the disease when the real culprit was the treatment. And Rahman had never questioned it, never checked, just followed the standard protocol and collected his fee. She forwarded the results to Dr. Kim with a note requesting an urgent consultation. Then she went to wake Ethan. He was already up, sitting in bed with his tablet doing something that looked like homework. Morning, Mom. Morning, baby. How do you feel? Ethan shrugged. Tired. My legs hurt. Scale of 1 to 10? Maybe 6? Victoria sat on the edge of his bed. The blood work came back. Your riluzole dose is too high. We're going to lower it and see if that helps with the pain. Ethan's eyes widened. So Marcus was right. Yes, he was right. Is he coming today? At 8. With his daughter? He has a daughter. Victoria smiled. He does. Her name is Sophie. She's 12. Is she sick too? She had a neurological condition when she was younger, but she's better now. Marcus helped her. Ethan processed this. So he knows about being sick. Yeah, he does. Good. Ethan relaxed against his pillows. I like Marcus. He doesn't treat me like I'm broken. The words hit Victoria like voltage. Is that how everyone else treats you? Kind of. They're always being really careful and nice, like I might break if they're normal. And Marcus isn't like that. Marcus tells me when I'm being lazy. He makes me work hard, and he talks to me about regular stuff, not just my disease. Ethan looked at his mother. Like you're doing now. Victoria's throat tightened. I should have done this sooner. Yeah, you should have. No accusation, just fact. I'm sorry. I know. Ethan reached for her hand. But you're here now. That's what matters. They sat like that, holding hands in the early morning light, until Svetlana knocked on the door with breakfast. Marcus and Sophie arrived at 8 sharp. Victoria answered the door herself again. She'd given most of the staff the day off, wanting privacy for what came next. Sophie Webb was 12, tall for her age, with dark hair in a ponytail, and her father's steady blue eyes. She walked with a slight limp barely noticeable and carried a backpack covered in pins from various science museums. Mrs. Chen, this is my daughter Sophie. Victoria extended her hand. It's nice to meet you. Sophie shook it firmly. Thank you for inviting me, ma'am. My dad says your son likes science. He does. He's in the media room, down the hall, last door on the left. Sophie glanced at her father, who nodded. She headed off, leaving the adults alone. Victoria turned to Marcus. Thank you for coming. You said you wanted to discuss your husband's research. I do. But first, the blood work confirmed what you suspected. Ethan's riluzole levels were toxic. I've contacted a new specialist who's adjusting his protocol. Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his posture relaxed. I'm glad. You saved my son's life. I need you to understand that. I just noticed a pattern. No. Victoria's voice was firm. You did what I should have done. You paid attention. You questioned the experts. You cared enough to do research on your own time with your own resources for a child who wasn't even yours. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Chen. Victoria. Call me Victoria. He blinked. That doesn't seem appropriate. Neither does firing the person who's doing more for my son than anyone else, but I almost did that yesterday. So let's skip the formalities. She gestured toward the study. Please. I want to show you something. She led him to David's study. The journals were laid out on the desk, along with printouts of research papers and Victoria's notes from her all-night reading session. Marcus stopped in the doorway. His eyes swept over the volumes, the diagrams, the equations covering every surface. This is your husband's work. 12 years of research. He was trying to find a cure for the genetic mutation that causes familial ALS, the same mutation killing Ethan. Marcus stepped closer, picked up one of the journals, read a few pages. His expression shifted surprise, respect, something deeper. This is extraordinary. He was working on gene therapy before it was mainstream. You can read it. Most of it. Some of the molecular biology is beyond me, but the therapeutic approach... Marcus flipped through more pages. He was targeting the SOD1 mutation directly, trying to replace the damaged gene with a functional copy. Victoria stared at him. How do you know this? I told you. I taught myself. Marcus set down the journal. After Sophie got better, I couldn't stop reading. Neurology, genetics, pharmacology, anything that might help me understand what happened to her. I never got a degree, but I probably know more than some residents. Can you finish David's work? The question hung between them. Marcus shook his head. I'm not a researcher. I don't have access to labs funding institutional support. What if you did? He looked at her. What are you asking? Victoria took a breath. She'd been forming this plan all night, refining it as the sun rose, and now it was time to speak it into existence. My husband left me a substantial life insurance policy, plus his share of a biotech company he co-founded. I never touched any of it. It's been sitting in investments for 3 years earning interest. Victoria. The total is approximately $47 million. Marcus went very still. I want to use it to fund a research foundation, continuing David's work, finding a cure for the mutation that's killing my son. Victoria's voice was steady, certain. And I want you to run it. That's impossible. Why? Because I'm not qualified. I don't have credentials, institutional backing. You have something better. You have the ability to see what credentialed experts miss. You have dedication. And you have personal stake. Your daughter recovered from something doctors said was impossible. You know what it means to fight the system and win. Marcus was shaking his head before she finished. I clean floors for a living. No one will take me seriously. Then we'll hire people who will be taken seriously. Researchers, doctors, scientists. But you'll guide the vision. You'll ask the questions. You'll make sure we're actually trying to cure this disease instead of just managing it. Victoria, this is insane. Is it? You spent 6 months tracking my son's symptoms with a $3 notebook and found a problem a top neurologist missed. Imagine what you could do with actual resources. Marcus walked to the window, stared out at the city. His hands were clenched at his sides. I can't be the face of a medical research foundation without credentials. The scientific community would laugh us out of the room. So we don't make you the face. We make you the director of patient advocacy and research coordination. Someone whose job is to bridge the gap between clinical research and real-world outcomes. Victoria moved to stand beside him. You'd work with the scientists, but your role would be focused on what matters most to the patients. Making sure the research actually helps them, not just academic careers. Marcus turned to look at her. Why are you doing this? Because my son is dying, and the current system isn't going to save him. Because my husband spent 12 years on research that might actually matter and no one's looking at it. And because you're the first person in 3 years who's made me believe there might be hope. She could see him wavering. See the war between what he knew was rational and what he desperately wanted to believe was possible. I need to think about this. Think about it. But while you think, look at these. Victoria handed him a folder. David's final research notes. He was onto something in the last 6 months. I can't quite understand it, but maybe you can. Marcus took the folder, opened it, started reading. His expression changed, sharpened. He was looking at combination therapy, gene therapy plus a novel glutamate inhibitor. Is that significant? It could be. Current ALS treatment only addresses glutamate toxicity. But if you could also repair the underlying genetic damage. Marcus's voice trailed off as he read faster. He ran preliminary mouse models. The results were promising. So, it's worth pursuing. If this data is accurate, it's more than worth pursuing. It's revolutionary. Marcus looked up. Why didn't he publish this? He died 2 weeks after those entries. I don't think he had time. Marcus carefully closed the folder, held it like it was sacred. I need to verify this. Talk to people who understand gene therapy better than I do. But if your husband was onto what I think he was onto... He stopped, started again. This could change everything. Then help me finish it. Down the hall they heard laughter. Sophie and Ethan talking about something that involved excited exclamations and the sound of wheels on hardwood. Marcus smiled faintly. Sophie's been lonely since we moved to the city. She doesn't make friends easily. Neither does Ethan. They stood in the study surrounded by a dead man's dreams, and Victoria realized this was the moment. The fulcrum point where everything could change or stay broken forever. I'm scared, she admitted. I don't know anything about medical research or how to run a foundation. I might fail. This might all be a waste of time and money. You might, Marcus agreed. But you're doing something. That's more than most people can say. Is that a yes? Marcus looked at the journals again. At David's handwriting still legible after 3 years. At the equations and diagrams and desperate hope of a man who'd tried to cure himself and ran out of time. It's a maybe. Let me read everything first. Talk to some researchers I know from Sophie's treatment. If they think this is viable, then maybe we try. Victoria extended her hand. Deal. Marcus shook it. His grip was firm, calloused, real. One condition, he said. We do this for all ALS patients, not just Ethan. If we find something, it gets shared. No patents, no exclusive rights, just the cure. David would have wanted that too. They released hands, and Victoria felt something shift in her chest. Purpose, maybe. Or just the first breath of hope she'd allowed herself in 3 years. From down the hall, Ethan's voice. Mom, come see what Sophie brought. Victoria and Marcus walked toward the sound together, and she thought about how strange life was. 24 hours ago, she'd fired this man for touching her son. Now she was planning to give him $47 million and the chance to change medical history. But when they reached the media room and saw Ethan and Sophie hunched over a laptop, showing each other YouTube videos about neuroplasticity and laughing like normal kids, Victoria knew it was the right choice. Some miracles required money. Others required credentials and institutional support. But this one just required someone willing to see what everyone else had missed and care enough to do something about it. Marcus Webb was that someone. And Victoria Chen was finally ready to let him try. 3 days later, Marcus called Victoria at 11 p.m. She was still awake, sitting in David's study with journal number 7, open in front of her, trying to decipher his notes on vector delivery systems. I talked to Dr. Elizabeth Morse at Stanford, Marcus said without preamble. She was one of the lead researchers on the gene therapy trial Sophie was in. I sent her David's final notes. Victoria sat up straighter. And she wants to meet with us, tomorrow if possible. She's flying into New York for a conference and can spare 3 hours. What did she say about the research? Marcus's voice was careful, controlled, but she could hear the excitement underneath. She said if the mouse model data is reproducible, your husband may have solved the delivery problem that's been blocking ALS gene therapy for a decade. Victoria's hand tightened on the phone. Meaning we might actually have a chance. They met Dr. Morse at a coffee shop in Midtown at 2 p.m. She was in her early 50s, gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, wearing jeans and a Stanford hoodie that had seen better days. She shook Victoria's hand with a grip that could crack walnuts. Mrs. Chen, I'm sorry for your loss. Your husband's work on SOD1 mutations was groundbreaking. You knew him. We corresponded a few times before his death. He was brilliant. Difficult but brilliant. Morse turned to Marcus. And you're the janitor who reads neuroscience journals. Marcus's jaw tightened. Yes, ma'am. Good. I like people who don't let credentials stop them from learning. Morse pulled out a tablet. I've reviewed your husband's final research notes. The combination therapy approach is sound. The glutamate inhibitor he developed shows promise. But the real breakthrough is the viral vector modification. Victoria leaned forward. Explain it to me like I'm not a scientist. Current gene therapy uses viruses to deliver corrected genes into cells, but the blood-brain barrier makes it almost impossible to get enough viral particles into motor neurons to make a difference. Your husband found a way to modify the virus so it crosses that barrier more efficiently. And that's significant. That's revolutionary, if it works. Morse swiped through data on her screen. But here's the problem. The mouse models only ran for 6 weeks before your husband died. We need at least 6 months of data to know if the therapy is actually effective and safe. And that requires funding, lab space, regulatory approval. We're looking at $2 to $3 million minimum just for the animal studies. Victoria pulled out her phone, opened her banking app, transferred $3 million to her operating account, showed Morse the screen. Done. What else do we need? Morse stared at the transaction confirmation. You're serious? My son has the same mutation that killed my husband. So yes, I'm serious. What else? A lab, researchers. And about 18 months if everything goes perfectly, which it never does. Ethan might not have 18 months, Marcus said quietly. Morse looked at him. I know. That's the hell of this disease. But we can't skip steps. Human trials require proof of safety and efficacy. Otherwise, we're just experimenting on desperate people. Victoria's phone rang. Svetlana, she answered. What's wrong? Mrs. Chen, Ethan's having trouble breathing. Not severe, but worse than usual. I think you should come home. Victoria was already standing. Call Dr. Kim. Tell her we're bringing him to Mount Sinai. I'll be there in 15 minutes. She hung up. Looked at Morse. I have to go. Go. We'll talk tomorrow. Victoria and Marcus ran for the street. He flagged a cab while she called ahead to the hospital. They barely spoke during the ride, but when they hit traffic on 3rd Avenue, Victoria's control cracked. This is my fault. I should have adjusted his medication sooner. I should have... Stop! Marcus's voice was firm. You're doing everything you can now. That's what matters. But if I'd paid attention earlier, you'd still be human. Still be a mother watching her child die. Still be doing your best in an impossible situation. He looked at her. Beating yourself up doesn't help Ethan. The cab lurched forward. Victoria closed her eyes and tried to breathe through the panic clawing at her throat. They reached the penthouse in 12 minutes. Svetlana had Ethan ready his breathing mask on an overnight bag packed. The boy's eyes were wide and frightened when he saw Victoria. I'm okay, Mom. It's not that bad. I know, baby. We're just being careful. Dr. Kim met them in the emergency department. She examined Ethan quickly, efficiently, while Victoria hovered at the bedside and Marcus stood back, giving them space. His diaphragm is weakening, Kim said after reviewing the chest x-rays. It's normal progression for ALS, but the previous medication dosage may have accelerated it. We'll start him on BiPAP at night to help with breathing, and I want to discuss a feeding tube. No. Ethan's voice was muffled by the oxygen mask, but the word was clear. Kim looked at him. Ethan, you've lost 8 pounds in 2 months. Your swallowing reflex is compromised. A G-tube would ensure you get proper nutrition. I said no. Sweetheart. Victoria started, but Ethan cut her off. I'm not getting a tube. I'm not. Tears were running down his face now. Dad had one. It didn't help. It just made him feel less human. Victoria's heart cracked. She looked at Kim. Can we have a moment? The doctor nodded and stepped out. Marcus followed, but Victoria called him back. Stay, please. He hesitated, then moved to the other side of Ethan's bed. Victoria took her son's hand. Tell me what you're scared of. I don't want to end up like Dad. Connected to machines, not able to talk or eat or do anything, just waiting to die. The G-tube isn't about giving up. It's about giving you strength to fight. But what if I don't want to fight anymore? The words hung in the air like smoke. Victoria couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her 9-year-old son had just said he wanted to die and she had no idea how to respond. Marcus spoke instead. Can I tell you about Sophie? Ethan looked at him, nodded. When she was 7, the doctors wanted to put a shunt in her brain to drain fluid. She refused. Said she'd rather die than have surgery. And I understood why she'd already been through so much. But I told her something my own father told me when I was going through a rough time. What? Giving up and taking a break aren't the same thing. Sometimes you need to let people help you rest so you can keep fighting later. That's not weakness. That's strategy. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Did Sophie get the shunt? She did. And she hated it for about 3 months. But then the headaches stopped and she could think clearly again, and she told me she was glad we made her do it. I'm not glad about anything right now. I know, and that's okay too. Ethan looked at his mother. Do you want me to get the tube? Victoria wanted to say yes. wanted to demand it, wanted to use every bit of parental authority to force him to accept the intervention that might buy him a few more months. But she looked at her son, really looked at him, and saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the fear, the desperate need for someone to hear what he was actually saying. "I want you to have a choice," she said finally. "So here's what we'll do. We'll try the BiPAP first. Work on your breathing at night. If you can maintain your weight without the feeding tube for the next month, we'll revisit it then. But if you keep losing weight, we have to do something. Deal?" Ethan considered this. "And if I hate the BiPAP, then we figure something else out. Together." "Okay." He relaxed slightly. "I can try that." Dr. Kim returned with discharge papers and instructions. They'd keep Ethan overnight for observation, then he could go home in the morning. Victoria sent Marcus home to check on Sophie, then settled into the chair beside Ethan's hospital bed. Around midnight, her son spoke into the darkness. "Mom?" "Yeah, baby?" "Do you think Dad's research will work?" Victoria had spent 3 days reading those journals, 3 days immersed in her husband's desperate hope and brilliant theories and ultimate failure, and she still didn't know the answer. "I don't know, but we're going to try. What if it doesn't work in time? Then we'll have tried, and someone else with ALS might benefit someday. So I'd be helping other people." "Yes, you already are. Every day you fight gives us more information about the disease. Every symptom we track, every treatment we test, it all helps." Ethan was quiet. Then, "I don't feel like I'm helping anyone. I feel like I'm just dying slowly." Victoria climbed into the narrow hospital bed beside him, carefully avoiding the IV line and oxygen tube. She put her arm around her son and felt how thin he'd become, how fragile. "You're not just dying. You're living. Every day you wake up and keep going despite the pain and the fear and the unfairness of it all. That's not dying. That's fighting. And it matters." "Does it?" "It does to me." Ethan leaned against her. "I miss Dad." "Me too." "Do you think he'd be proud of what we're doing with his research?" Victoria thought about the journals, about David's final entry full of regret and unfinished work and desperate love for the son he'd never save. "Yes, I think he'd be proud." They fell asleep like that. Mother and son curled together in a hospital bed while machines beeped softly around them, and New York City hummed outside the window. Marcus picked them up the next morning. He'd brought coffee for Victoria and a breakfast sandwich for Ethan that the boy managed 3 bites of before giving up. "Sophie wanted to come, but she has school," Marcus said as he navigated traffic. "She made Ethan a get-well card, though." He handed back an envelope. Ethan opened it. Inside was a drawing of 2 stick figures, one in a wheelchair, one standing holding hands under a rainbow. The text read, "Being sick sucks, but you're tougher than you think. Love, Sophie." Ethan smiled for the first time since the hospital. "Can you tell her thanks?" "You can tell her yourself. She's coming over this weekend if that's okay with your mom." Victoria nodded. "More than okay." They reached the penthouse to find an unexpected visitor waiting in the lobby. Dr. Rahman. Victoria's expression went cold. "What are you doing here?" "I came to apologize." Rahman looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I reviewed Ethan's case file after you fired me. You were right. I should have questioned the dosage sooner. I should have run blood work before increasing his medication. I made assumptions based on standard protocols, instead of treating him as an individual patient." "Yes, you did." "I also spoke with the medical board about Mr. Webb's involvement in Ethan's care." Marcus tensed. Victoria stepped forward. "And I told them I was wrong to question his observations, that his analysis was sound and potentially saved Ethan's life. I withdrew my complaint." Marcus exhaled slowly. "Thank you." Rahman nodded. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Chen, I hope Dr. Kim can help where I couldn't." He turned to leave, then stopped. "And the research foundation you're planning, I'd like to contribute. Not money, I know you don't need that. But clinical trial design, regulatory guidance, if you want it. Victoria studied him. The man had missed something crucial, yes. But he was owning it. Trying to make it right. Call me next week, we'll talk. Raman left. Victoria, Marcus, and Ethan headed upstairs. Svetlana had prepared lunch, but Ethan wasn't hungry. He went to his room to rest, and Victoria and Marcus retreated to the study. Dr. Morse emailed this morning, Marcus said, pulling out his phone. She's assembling a research team. 3 postdocs, a lab manager, and access to Stanford's gene therapy facilities. She wants to start the extended mouse trials in 2 weeks. That fast. She's motivated. Apparently her sister died of ALS 5 years ago. This is personal for her too. Victoria sat down heavily. Everyone involved in this has a personal connection to the disease. Is that good or bad? Both. We'll care more. But we'll also be more desperate. More likely to see results that aren't there, or rush things that shouldn't be rushed. So what do? We build in accountability. External oversight. Regular reviews by researchers who aren't emotionally invested. Marcus pulled up a document on his phone. I've been working on a proposal for the foundation structure. Want to see it? He handed her the phone. Victoria read through his notes, detailed organizational charts, ethical guidelines, conflict of interest policies. It was thorough, professional, and clearly the work of someone who'd spent serious time thinking about how to do this right. You wrote this. I had a lot of time while Sophie was in her therapy sessions over the years. I'd sit in waiting rooms and think about how research should work if the goal was actually helping patients instead of publishing papers. This is good, really good. It's theoretical. I've never actually run anything bigger than a household. Neither have most foundation directors when they start. Victoria scrolled through more of his proposal. We should make this official. File the paperwork, establish the board, hire the team. You want me on the board? I want you to chair it. Marcus shook his head. Victoria, I'm a janitor with a GED. You're a man who taught himself enough neuroscience to catch what a specialist missed, who spent 6 months documenting my son's symptoms because you cared. Who's raising a daughter who survived the impossible? She set down the phone. Credentials don't make you qualified. Caring does. And you've proven you care. People will question it. Let them. I'm not building this foundation for people. I'm building it for Ethan and every other patient who's been failed by a system that values protocols over people. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, okay, but I have conditions. Name them. First, we hire a medical director with actual credentials. Someone who can interface with the FDA, other institutions, all the official channels. I'll do patient advocacy and research coordination, but I won't pretend to be something I'm not. Agreed. What else? Second, everything we develop gets shared. No exclusive patents, no price gouging. If we find a treatment, it needs to be accessible. That was always the plan. And third, Sophie and I stay in our apartment. I'm not taking a salary that would make me feel bought. Victoria smiled faintly. You're negotiating for less money. I'm negotiating for integrity. There's a difference. Fine, modest salary, but we're covering Sophie's college fund and your health insurance. Victoria. Non-negotiable. You're giving up janitorial work to do this full-time. You need security. Marcus considered this, extended his hand. Deal. They shook on it, and Victoria felt something settle in her chest. This was happening. They were actually doing this. Her phone rang. Dr. Morse. We have a problem, Morse said without preamble. I sent David's research notes to a colleague at the NIH for a second opinion. She flagged something concerning. Victoria's stomach dropped. What? The viral vector he designed, it's brilliant, but it's also incredibly risky. If it crosses the blood-brain barrier too efficiently, it could trigger an immune response in the central nervous system, potentially fatal. David didn't mention that in his notes. because he probably didn't live long enough to discover it. We ran preliminary simulations. The risk is real. Maybe 5%, maybe higher. We won't know until we test it. Victoria looked at Marcus. His expression was grim. So what are you saying? Victoria asked. The research is too dangerous. I'm saying we need to be very, very careful, and we need to make sure everyone involved understands the risks, including Ethan, if this ever gets to human trials. He's 9 years old. I know, but if we develop a treatment and he wants to try it, you'll have to explain that it might kill him faster than the disease. Victoria closed her eyes. This is impossible. No, it's just hard. There's a difference. After Morse hung up, Victoria and Marcus sat in silence. Outside, the afternoon sun was beginning its descent, painting the city in shades of gold and shadow. Do we stop? Victoria asked finally. Is this too risky? Marcus didn't answer right away. He picked up one of David's journals, flipped through it, stopped at a page marked with a yellow sticky note. Listen to this, he said. It's from about a year before he died. Every treatment carries risk, but doing nothing is also a choice, and for ALS patients, it's a death sentence. I'd rather die trying something that might work than live knowing I never tried at all. He looked at Victoria. Your husband knew the risks. He was willing to take them. But Ethan isn't David. He's a child. He can't consent to something this dangerous. Not yet. But in a few years he'll be old enough to choose. And by then maybe we'll have answers. Maybe we'll have refined the therapy enough to reduce the risks. And if we haven't, then we'll have tried, and we'll have data that helps the next researcher get closer. Victoria stood, walked to the window. Below, people hurried along the sidewalk, going to jobs and appointments and normal lives that didn't include impossible choices about experimental therapies and acceptable risk levels. I need to talk to Ethan, she said. Not about clinical trials or consent, just about what he wants, what kind of life he's fighting for. That's smart. And I need to talk to my board of directors, tell them I'm stepping back from the company to focus on this foundation. Marcus's eyes widened. You're leaving Chen Industries? Not leaving, delegating. I built that company because I needed to prove I could. But Ethan doesn't need a CEO mother. He needs a mother who shows up. Victoria, you don't have to choose between your work and your son. I'm not choosing. I'm prioritizing. There's a difference. She turned from the window. I'll stay on as chairman, handle major decisions. But day-to-day operations go to my VP, and I'm working from home 4 days a week. What will your board say? They'll say I'm making a mistake, that I'm letting personal issues compromise my leadership, that the company needs me full-time. Victoria smiled grimly. And I'll tell them they're wrong, that I've spent 3 years proving I can run a company. Now I'm going to prove I can save my son. Marcus stood. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Do you? My wife used to say that success is measured by what you're willing to sacrifice. Most people sacrifice their families for their careers. The rare ones sacrifice their careers for their families. He paused. Those are the ones who die without regrets. Victoria's throat tightened. Your wife sounds like she was remarkable. She was. Sophie got her strength from her mother. I just try not to mess it up too badly. They stood in the study, two people who'd started as employer and employee and somehow become partners in an impossible mission. And Victoria realized that for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't alone in this fight. The foundation paperwork was filed on a Friday. Chen Medical Research Foundation, dedicated to finding treatments for ALS and other neuromuscular diseases. Board of Directors, Victoria Chen Chairman, Marcus Webb Director of Patient Research, Dr. Elizabeth Morse, Chief Scientific Officer, Dr. Sarah Kim, Medical Director, and Dr. Raman, surprisingly, as Clinical Advisor. The first board meeting was held in Victoria's dining room because they didn't have office space yet. Ethan and Sophie sat in the next room, supposedly doing homework, but actually playing some kind of elaborate video game that involved a lot of shouting. "We have 3 million committed for the initial mouse trials," Morse reported. "Stanford's approved lab access. We'll run the full 6-month protocol David designed, plus an additional 3 months of safety monitoring. If results are positive, we'll file for FDA approval for primate trials." "Timeline?" Victoria asked. 9 months minimum, 18 months more realistic." "Ethan might not have 18 months, Victoria said quietly. "I know, but we can't skip steps. We have to do this right." Kim spoke up. "I've been reviewing Ethan's current treatment plan. The BiPAP is helping his breathing, but his swallowing is getting worse. We need to revisit the feeding tube discussion." "He's still refusing." "Yes, but Victoria, he's lost another 3 pounds. We're approaching the point where refusal isn't medically viable." Marcus leaned forward. "What if we gave him a different choice? Not tube or nothing but different options for nutritional support?" Kim frowned. "Like what?" "Liquid nutrition supplements he can control. High-calorie smoothies. Make it feel like his decision instead of something being done to him." "That might work short-term. But ALS affects swallowing reflexes. Eventually, liquid becomes as dangerous as solid food." "So, we buy time," Marcus said. "Give him agency now while he still has it. When the swallowing gets worse, he'll have had months of feeling in control. That might make the tube easier to accept." Kim considered this. "It's worth trying." They talked for another hour, budgets, timelines, ethical protocols. When the meeting ended, Raman approached Victoria privately. "I know I don't deserve to be here," he said, "but I'm grateful for the chance to make this right. Don't make it right for me. Make it right for the next patient." "I will. I promise." After everyone left, Victoria found Ethan and Sophie in the game room. They'd abandoned the video game for something else. Sophie was showing Ethan how to do finger exercises to maintain dexterity. "Like this." Sophie demonstrated, moving each finger independently. "It's boring, but it helps. I had to do them for years after my surgery." Ethan tried to copy her movements. His fingers trembled, but they moved. "That's good," Sophie said. "Way better than yesterday." "Really?" "Really, you're getting stronger." Victoria watched from the doorway. This was what Marcus had given her son, not just therapy exercises, but hope. The living proof that getting better was possible. That night, after Sophie and Marcus left, Victoria sat with Ethan for his BiPAP setup. The mask fit over his nose and mouth, forcing air into his lungs in a steady rhythm. "I hate this thing," Ethan mumbled through the mask. "I know, but it's helping you breathe." "It makes me feel like Darth Vader." Victoria smiled. "Darth Vader was pretty powerful. He was also evil." "Fair point." She adjusted the straps. "Better?" "I guess." They sat in comfortable silence. Then Ethan said, "Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. If the research works, if they find a treatment, would I have to be a guinea pig?" Victoria's heart clenched. "What do you mean?" "Sophie told me her treatment was experimental, that her parents had to sign a bunch of papers saying they knew it might not work. Would you make me do that?" "I would never make you do anything you didn't want to do." "But what if it was my only chance? Then we'd talk about it. You, me, the doctors, and we'd decide together." "What if I was too sick to decide?" The question hit Victoria like voltage. "Why are you asking this?" Ethan's eyes were wide behind the mask. "Because I'm getting worse. I know everyone's trying to pretend I'm not, but I can feel it. And I want to know if I can't talk anymore. If I can't tell you what I want, what will you do?" Victoria pulled the mask off gently, looked her son in the eye. "I will make the choice that gives you the best chance at a life worth living, not just alive, but actually living. How will you know what that is?" "I don't know, but I promise I'll try to choose what you would choose if you could." Ethan thought about this. "Okay, I trust you." Victoria put the mask back on. kissed his forehead. "Get some sleep, baby." "Mom." "Yeah. I'm glad you're home more now, even if it's because I'm dying." "You're not dying, you're fighting." "Same thing, kind of." "No, fighting means you haven't given up. Dying is what happens when you do." Ethan's eyes drifted closed. Victoria sat with him until his breathing steadied, then went back to the study. She had 3 more of David's journals to read before morning, and somewhere in those pages might be the answer that saved their son. Or at least the question that led someone else to find it. Either way, she was done running from this. Done pretending work could numb the pain of watching Ethan slip away. She was all in now. And whatever came next, they'd face it together. The call from Dr. Morse came at 4:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, 6 months into the mouse trials. Victoria was already awake, sitting in the study, with journal number 11 and a cold cup of coffee when her phone lit up. "We have results," Morse said. Her voice was flat, unreadable. Victoria's hand tightened on the phone. "And you need to see this in person. Can you get to Stanford by tomorrow? Tell me now." A pause. Then, "The therapy works. Not perfectly. Not in every mouse. But it works." Victoria couldn't breathe. Couldn't speak. The words hung in the air like something fragile that might shatter if she moved wrong. "Victoria, are you there?" "I'm here. What do you mean it works?" The mice treated with David's modified vector showed significant improvement in motor function, increased survival time, reduced muscle degeneration. The ones that responded, about 60%, lived an average of 8 months longer than controls. 8 months. For a mouse, that was substantial. For a human with ALS, that could mean years. What about the other 40%? No response, but no adverse effects either. The therapy was safe. Safe enough for primate trials. That's what we need to discuss in person. There are complications. Victoria was already pulling up flight options on her laptop. "I'll be there by noon." She woke Marcus with a text. He called back immediately. "What's wrong?" "The trials worked. We need to go to Stanford." "When?" "Today. Can you get someone to watch Sophie?" "My neighbor can take her. I'll meet you at the airport." Victoria hung up and went to check on Ethan. He was asleep, the BiPAP mask rising and falling with each assisted breath. He'd lost more weight despite the high-calorie supplements. His arms were thin as kindling. She kissed his forehead without waking him, then left a note with Svetlana about where she'd be. Marcus met her at the private terminal at JFK. He was wearing the same jacket he'd worn that first day she caught him, with Ethan-worn denim frayed at the cuffs. But his expression was different now. Focused, determined. They didn't talk much on the flight. Victoria tried to read David's notes, but the words blurred. Marcus stared out the window at clouds that looked like mountains. "What if this is it?" Victoria said finally. "What if we're actually close? Then we still have years of work ahead. Primate trials, safety reviews, FDA approval, human trials. But it's possible. It's possible." The plane touched down at 11:47 a.m. Pacific time. A car was waiting to take them directly to Stanford's medical campus. Dr. Morse met them at the research facility, looking like she hadn't slept in days. "Come see." She led them through security doors and down a long corridor that smelled like antiseptic and possibility. They entered a lab where rows of cages lined the walls, each containing mice marked with identification numbers. Morse stopped at cage 47. "This mouse received the gene therapy 12 weeks ago. ALS model, same mutation as Ethan. Watch." She opened the cage and placed the mouse on a testing platform. The mouse moved across it, not smoothly, but steadily. It climbed a small ramp, grasped a pellet with its front paws, and ate it. Compare that to the control group. Morse moved to cage 51. The mouse inside barely moved. Its hind legs dragged uselessly. Victoria felt tears burning her eyes. They're the same age. Same age, same mutation, same disease, progression timeline. The only difference is the therapy. Marcus leaned closer to cage 47. How many responded like this? 37 out of 62. The responders showed improvement within 4 weeks and maintained it throughout the trial period. Some even continued improving past week 8. And the non-responders? Morse pulled up data on a tablet. Showed standard disease progression. No better, but crucially no worse. The therapy didn't harm them. Victoria couldn't stop watching the mouse in cage 47 navigate its platform. This tiny creature engineered to die slowly like her husband, like her son, was moving with purpose. With life. What are the complications you mentioned? Morse's expression darkened. The immune response issue. We saw it in 3 mice. Their bodies recognized the viral vector as foreign and attacked it. 2 recovered with immunosuppressants. 1 died. That's a 5% fatality rate. In mice, we don't know what it would be in primates or humans. Could be lower, could be higher. Marcus spoke up. What triggers the response? Is there a way to predict it? We're working on that. There appear to be genetic markers that correlate with rejection, but we need more data. A lot more data. How long until primate trials? 6 months minimum. We need to refine the vector, develop better screening protocols, get FDA approval. And we need funding. Primate research is exponentially more expensive than mice. Victoria pulled out her phone. How much? Another 5 million, maybe more. Done. What else? Morse and Marcus exchanged glances. Victoria, Marcus said carefully, 5 million is a lot of money. I have 47 million sitting in investments doing nothing except earning interest while my son dies. So yes, 5 million is done. What else do we need? Morse recovered first. A primate facility. We can't do this at Stanford. Their primate lab is booked for 2 years. We'd need to partner with another institution or build our own facility. How long to build one? 18 months. But partnering with an existing facility would be faster. I have contacts at UC Davis who might be willing. Make the call. They spent the next 4 hours in conference rooms going over data projections timelines. Morse had assembled a team of postdocs who presented their findings with the enthusiasm of people who'd just witnessed something impossible become real. By the time they left campus, it was dark. Marcus and Victoria grabbed dinner at a quiet restaurant near the airport, both too wired to sleep. We're really doing this, Marcus said, pushing food around his plate. We're actually developing a treatment. We're trying to. There's a difference. Is there 6 months ago this was just an idea? Now we have proof of concept. Working therapy in living organisms. That's not trying. That's succeeding. Victoria took a sip of water. Ethan asked me last week how much longer he has. Marcus set down his fork. I didn't know what to say. Dr. Kim estimates maybe 2 years with current treatment, maybe less. The research timeline is longer than that. So we accelerate. We can't skip safety protocols. I'm not suggesting we skip them. I'm suggesting we run them in parallel instead of sequence. Start primate trials while we're still analyzing the mouse data. Begin planning human trial protocols while the primates are ongoing. That's risky. If we miss something. If we don't try, Ethan dies. That's not risk. That's certainty. Victoria met his gaze. You're talking about cutting corners. I'm talking about working smarter. The FDA process is designed to be cautious, which is good. But it's also designed for diseases that progress slowly. ALS doesn't give us the luxury of time. And if we rush it and someone gets hurt, then we own that. We make it right. But at least we tried. Marcus leaned forward. Victoria, I've watched my daughter beat a disease doctors said was incurable. I've watched Ethan improve with basic therapy that specialists said was worthless. I'm done accepting what experts say is impossible. This is different. This is gene therapy. This is permanent changes to DNA. If we get it wrong, we won't, because we're going to be more careful than anyone has ever been. We're going to screen every patient, monitor every symptom, and we're going to be honest about the risks. He paused. But we're also going to move as fast as safely possible, because careful and slow aren't the same thing. Victoria thought about Ethan sleeping in his bed at home, the BiPAP breathing for him, his body slowly betraying him cell by cell. She thought about David's journal's 12 years of work that had died with him because he ran out of time. Okay, we accelerate, but we do it right. Marcus nodded. We do it right. They flew back to New York that night. Victoria got home at 2 a.m. to find Svetlana waiting up. Mrs. Chen, Ethan had an episode around midnight, choking. I had to suction his airway. Victoria's blood went cold. Is he okay? He's sleeping now, but Dr. Kim needs to know. The swallowing is getting worse. Victoria went to Ethan's room. Her son was curled under blankets, the BiPAP humming softly. She sat beside him and watched him breathe, and she made a decision. The next morning, she called an emergency board meeting. Everyone assembled in the dining room by 10 a.m. Morse on video from California, the others in person. We're accelerating the timeline, Victoria announced. I want primate trials starting in 3 months, not 6. I want human trial protocols drafted now, not after primate results. And I want to identify potential trial participants immediately. Dr. Kim spoke up. Victoria, the FDA won't approve human trials without complete primate data. Then we run them overseas first. There are countries with faster approval processes. That's ethically questionable. So is watching my son suffocate because we're too cautious. Victoria's voice was hard. I'm not suggesting we compromise safety. I'm suggesting we stop treating urgency like it's irresponsible. Ramon cleared his throat. There may be a middle path. Expanded access protocols. If we can demonstrate that primate trials are going well, we could apply for compassionate use authorization. Allow terminally ill patients to access the therapy before full FDA approval. Marcus leaned forward. That's for patients with no other options. Ethan has other options. Does he? Victoria pulled out her phone. Showed them the message from Dr. Kim about last night's choking episode. He's 9 years old and he's choking on his own saliva. How many options does that sound like? Silence. Morse spoke carefully from the screen. If we pursue expanded access, we need to be very clear about the risks. The therapy worked in 60% of mice. It killed 1. We don't know what those numbers look like in humans. So we tell people the truth. We give them the data and let them choose. Some people will choose wrong. They'll be desperate, and they'll take risks they shouldn't. And some people will choose right. They'll take a calculated risk for a chance at life, instead of accepting a certain death. Victoria looked around the table. That's what informed consent means. We provide information. They make choices. Dr. Kim shook her head. I can't support giving experimental gene therapy to a 9-year-old child who can't legally consent. I'm not asking you to support it now. I'm asking you to help us get to a point where it's safe enough to offer as an option. In 2 years, when Ethan's 11 and the disease has progressed further, I want to be able to say we have something to try. Can we do that or not? The room was silent. Then Ramon spoke. I think we can. If we're strategic, if we're careful, if we're honest about what we know and don't know. He looked at Victoria. But you need to understand something. Even if everything goes perfectly, there's a real chance the therapy won't work for Ethan. Or worse, that it will hurt him. You need to be prepared for that. I'm prepared to try. That's all I can do. Marcus pulled out a folder. I've been drafting trial protocols. Patient selection criteria, monitoring procedures, informed consent documents. It's rough, but it's a start. He distributed copies. Victoria read through his work, detailed, thoughtful, brutally honest about risks and unknowns. This wasn't the work of someone cutting corners. This was the work of someone who understood exactly what was at stake. This is good, Morse said, reading her copy. Really good. Marcus, where did you learn clinical trial design? Books, online courses. And I consulted with researchers from Sophie's trial about what they wish they'd done differently. We can use this. With some modifications, this could be the foundation for our protocols. The meeting ran until 3 p.m. By the end, they had a plan. Aggressive, but not reckless. Fast, but not careless. And most importantly, honest. After everyone left, Victoria found Marcus in the study staring at David's journals. "Thank you," she said, "for the protocols, for pushing me to move faster, for believing this is possible. I have to believe it's possible. Otherwise, what's the point?" "Do you think it will work?" "Really?" Marcus turned to face her. "I think we have a chance. That's more than most ALS patients get." "Is a chance enough?" "It has to be." Victoria's phone buzzed. Ethan texting from his room. "Mom, can Sophie come over? I want to show her something." She smiled. "Ethan wants Sophie to visit." "I'll call her. She's been asking about him." An hour later, Sophie arrived with a backpack full of art supplies. She and Ethan disappeared into the game room, and soon Victoria could hear them laughing about something. She and Marcus sat in the kitchen drinking coffee and not talking about research or trials or timelines. Just sitting. "Can I ask you something personal?" Victoria said finally. "Sure." "How did you do it? After your wife died, how did you keep going?" Marcus was quiet for a long time. "I didn't have a choice. Sophie needed me. So I got up every day and did what needed to be done. Some days that was everything: work, cooking, therapy appointments. Some days it was just getting her to school and keeping us both alive. But I kept moving forward because stopping wasn't an option." "Did it get easier?" "Eventually. The grief is still there, but it gets quieter, and you learn to carry it differently. I'm terrified of losing Ethan the way I lost David, watching him fade piece by piece until there's nothing left." "I know, but you're not losing him yet. He's still here, still fighting, and you're actually showing up for it now instead of hiding at work." The words should have stung. Instead, they felt like absolution. "I wasted 3 years." "You survived 3 years. There's a difference." From the game room, Ethan shouted something about needing more blue paint. Sophie's voice responded with instructions about color mixing. "They're good for each other," Marcus observed. "They are. Sophie's been amazing for him." "It goes both ways. Sophie doesn't have many friends. Most kids don't know how to relate to her, but Ethan sees her as just another kid. Because he knows what it's like to be different." "Exactly." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the kids argue cheerfully about artistic technique, and Victoria thought about how strange life was. 6 months ago, Marcus was the janitor. Now he was her partner in an impossible mission, the person she trusted most to help save her son. Her phone rang. "Dr. Morse." "I talked to UC Davis. They'll partner with us on primate trials. We can start in 8 weeks if we expedite the paperwork." Victoria's heart jumped. 8 weeks? They have an opening in their schedule, but we need to commit now and provide half the funding up front. "How much?" $2.5 million. "Done. Send me the wire instructions." After she hung up, Marcus was staring at her. "You just committed $2.5 million in a 30-second phone call." "I committed to saving my son. The money is just a tool." "Most people don't have that tool." "I know. Which is why whatever we develop needs to be accessible. No patents, remember. You're going to spend tens of millions developing a therapy and then give it away. I'm going to spend whatever it takes to find a cure. And then I'm going to make sure every ALS patient can access it, not just the ones who can afford it." Victoria stood. "David died trying to solve this. I'm not going to let his work become another drug that only rich people can access." And Marcus stood too, extended his hand. "Then let's get to work." They shook on it, and Victoria felt the weight of what they were attempting settle fully on her shoulders. They were trying to cure a disease that had killed thousands, trying to finish research that had defeated her brilliant husband, trying to save a 9-year-old boy who was running out of time. It was impossible. But they were going to try anyway. The next 8 weeks were a blur of paperwork, contracts, and scientific reviews. Victoria officially stepped back from day-to-day operations at Chen Industries, promoting her VP to CEO, and keeping only strategic oversight for herself. The board complained. The shareholders questioned. She didn't care. Marcus worked 18-hour days coordinating between research teams, reviewing protocols, and somehow still finding time to help Ethan with his therapy exercises every evening. Ethan continued to decline, slowly but noticeably. He needed the BiPAP more hours each day. His weight dropped to 61 pounds. He started using a voice amplifier because his words were getting harder to understand. But he didn't give up. Every day he did his exercises. Every week he met with Dr. Kim and tolerated the examinations and tests. And every weekend, Sophie came over and they painted or played games or just talked about normal kid things. "Do you think the mouse therapy will work on people?" Ethan asked one Saturday while Sophie was teaching him origami. Victoria was in the doorway unnoticed. She froze. Sophie didn't miss a beat. "Maybe. My dad says science is about trying things and learning from what happens." "But what if it doesn't work?" "Then they'll try something else. That's what scientists do." "Aren't you scared that I'll die before they figure it out?" Sophie was quiet for a moment, her fingers still folding paper. "Yeah, I'm scared. But being scared doesn't mean we stop hoping." "How do you hope when things are bad?" "I think about the stuff I can control. Like right now, I can control making this crane look like a crane and not a weird blob. And I can control being your friend. The rest is just stuff that happens." Ethan considered this. "That's actually kind of smart." "I know. I'm very wise for 12. They both laughed, and Victoria backed away before they could see her tears. That night, after Sophie left and Ethan was asleep, Victoria called Marcus. "Your daughter is extraordinary." "I know. She gets it from her mother. She's teaching Ethan how to cope better than any therapist we've hired. Kids are good at that. They don't overthink things." Victoria hesitated. "Marcus, what happens if this doesn't work, if we spend millions and years and Ethan doesn't make it? Then we'll have tried everything we could, and we'll have advanced the research for the next kid." "That's not enough." "I know, but it might have to be." The primate trials began on schedule. 12 rhesus macaques genetically engineered to carry the same SAUDI1 mutation as Ethan received David's modified gene therapy. The research team monitored them constantly, tracking every symptom, every response, every data point. Victoria visited the facility once, needing to see for herself. The primates were housed in large, enriched enclosures. They looked healthy, alert, nothing like the mice in their small cages. "How long until we know if it's working?" she asked Morse. "We'll see initial indicators in 6 to 8 weeks, but we need 6 months of data before we can draw real conclusions." 6 months. Ethan might not have 6 months. "What if we see positive results earlier? Can we accelerate?" Victoria. "I know you want to move fast, but rushing this could mean missing critical safety data. We owe it to every patient who might use this therapy to get it right." "I know, Victoria couldn't finish the sentence. Morse put a hand on her shoulder. "I know, but we're doing everything we can as fast as we safely can. That has to be enough." Victoria flew home that night and went straight to Ethan's room. He was awake reading something on his tablet with the BiPAP mask on. She pulled the mask aside gently. "Hey baby, what are you reading?" "Stuff about gene therapy. There's this website that explains it for kids." "Yeah. What does it say?" "That scientists can fix broken genes by putting in new ones, like updating software on a computer." "That's a good way to think about it." Ethan looked at her with those two old eyes. "Is that what they're trying to do for me? Fix my broken genes?" Victoria's throat tightened. "They're trying, but it's complicated. It might not work." I know, but maybe it will. Maybe it will. Mom, even if it doesn't work, I'm glad we tried. It feels better than just waiting to die. Victoria pulled him into a hug, careful of the tubes and wires connecting him to machines. We're not giving up. Not ever. I know. Neither am I. She held her son in the quiet darkness, feeling his bird-thin body against hers, and she made a silent promise. Whatever it took, however long it took, she would fight for him. And if fighting wasn't enough, she'd at least make sure he knew he wasn't alone. That he'd never been alone. That love, even when it couldn't cure disease, still mattered more than anything else in the world. The call came at 6:32 a.m. on a Thursday, 10 weeks into the primate trials. Victoria was already awake, had been awake for hours, sitting in David's study, with his final journal open to the last page he'd ever written. Her phone vibrated against the desk, and Morse's name lit up the screen. We have preliminary results. Victoria's chest constricted. Tell me. 9 of the 12 primates are showing motor improvement. Measurable, significant improvement. Their muscle strength tests are better than baseline. Their coordination is improving. Victoria, it's working. The room tilted. Victoria gripped the edge of the desk. What about the other 3? One shows no response, but no decline. The other 2... Morse paused. They're showing signs of immune rejection. We're managing it with suppressants, but it's serious. How serious? One is stable, the other is critical. We might lose her. Victoria closed her eyes. What's the rejection rate, percentage? 16% based on current data. But that's with a small sample size. Could be higher or lower in a larger population. And if we moved to human trials with that rate, we'd need to screen aggressively for genetic markers that correlate with rejection, implement strict monitoring protocols, and be very, very clear with participants that there's a real chance of serious complications. Victoria stood and walked to the window. Manhattan was waking up below coffee shops, opening taxis, honking millions of people starting their days with problems that didn't include calculating acceptable mortality rates. When can we apply for human trials? Victoria, we're only 10 weeks in. We need the full 6 months. The 9 primates that responded. How long before their improvement plateaued? A pause. Week 6 for most of them. But, so we already have evidence of efficacy. What we don't have is long-term safety data. Exactly, which is why we need to wait. What if we don't wait for FDA approval? What if we go the compassionate use route like Rahman suggested? Morse's voice hardened. I won't support administering experimental gene therapy to humans without complete primate data. That's not science. That's desperation. My son is dying. Desperation is all I have left. Then I'm sorry, but I can't help you. I won't compromise the integrity of this research because you're running out of time. That's not fair to the thousands of other ALS patients who need a real cure, not a Hail Mary. The words landed like a slap. Victoria's hand tightened on the phone. So, what are you saying? I'm saying we do this right, or we don't do it at all. I'll keep you updated on the primate trials, but human trials don't happen until I have 6 months of clean data. That's non-negotiable. Morse hung up. Victoria stood alone in the study, watching the sun rise over a city that didn't care about her son's timeline, and she felt the weight of impossible choices crushing down on her shoulders. She could wait, follow the protocols, do everything right, and watch Ethan die before the therapy was ready. Or she could push, cut corners, take risks, and potentially destroy the very research that might save him. There was no good choice. There was only the choice she could live with. Her phone rang again. Marcus. I just talked to Morse. Are you okay? No, but that doesn't matter. We need to talk, in person. I'll be there in an hour. Victoria went to check on Ethan. He was still asleep, his chest rising and falling with the BiPAP's rhythm. His face looked gray in the early light. How much weight had he lost this week? How many days did he have left? She touched his forehead gently. He stirred but didn't wake. "I'm trying, baby," she whispered. "I'm trying so hard." Marcus arrived exactly an hour later, looking like he'd dressed in 30 seconds. His hair was uncombed, his jacket inside out. But his eyes were clear and focused. They sat in the study with the door closed. "Morse is right," Marcus said before Victoria could speak. "We can't rush human trials without complete data. It's not ethical. Ethan doesn't have 6 months. You don't know that." "Yes, I do. Dr. Kim told me last week his diaphragm function is declining faster than projected. She thinks we have 4 months, maybe 5. Marcus's face went pale. "She told me 6 months when I asked." "She's been telling you what you want to hear. She told me the truth." They sat in silence. Outside, car horns blared, and people shouted, and life continued with complete indifference to the tragedy unfolding in this penthouse. "There might be another option," Marcus said finally. "It's not ideal, but it exists." "Tell me." "There are clinical trial networks that operate outside FDA jurisdiction, mostly in Europe and parts of Asia. They have different approval standards, faster timelines." Victoria leaned forward. "Keep talking." "I have a contact from Sophie's treatment, Dr. Anton Werner in Switzerland. He runs a neurological research facility that specializes in experimental therapies. They've done gene therapy trials that would never get approved in the US. Higher risk, higher reward." "Is it legitimate?" "Legitimate, yes. Ethical. That's complicated. Werner doesn't cut corners on science, but he's willing to take risks the FDA would never allow. His patients are typically terminal cases who've exhausted every other option. So people who have nothing to lose." "Exactly. But Victoria, the mortality rate in his trials is higher than standard research, sometimes significantly higher. People die because they're trying treatments that aren't ready. People also live, people who would have died anyway." Marcus met her gaze. "Some do. Sophie's treatment came out of Werner's facility. It saved her life. But I personally know 2 other families who went there and lost their children to complications." The words hung between them like smoke. "What would it take to get Ethan into one of Werner's trials?" "Proof that he's terminal, complete medical records, about $200,000 for treatment costs, and your willingness to sign a waiver acknowledging that this could kill him." Victoria thought about Ethan choking on his own saliva, about the BiPAP breathing for him more hours each day, about the look in his eyes when he asked how much longer he had. "Set up a meeting." "Victoria, I'm not asking your permission. I'm asking you to help me explore an option. If Werner says the therapy isn't ready, I'll listen. But I need to know what's possible." Marcus pulled out his phone. "I'll call him. But you need to understand something. Going this route means leaving Morse and the foundation behind. She'll never support this. Then we do it separately. The foundation continues the research for other patients. We pursue this for Ethan. And if it destroys the foundation's credibility, if people say we're reckless, that we can't be trusted, then they say it. But my son gets a chance." Marcus stared at her for a long moment. Then he dialed. The conversation was in German, which Victoria didn't speak, but she heard Ethan's name several times. Heard Marcus describe the primate trial results. Heard his voice drop when discussing timelines. After 15 minutes, Marcus switched to English. "Dr. Werner wants to video conference with you and review Ethan's medical records. He'll make a preliminary assessment of whether the therapy is viable." "When?" "Tomorrow morning European time. That's 3 a.m. our time." "I'll be ready." After Marcus left, Victoria spent the day gathering every piece of Ethan's medical history. Test results, imaging studies, progression notes. She compiled David's research into a single document. She prepared like she was going into the most important negotiation of her life. Because she was. At 2:45 a.m., she was back in the study with her laptop and 3 cups of coffee. Marcus arrived at 2:50, looking more awake than he had any right to be. The video call connected at exactly 3 a.m. Dr. Anton Werner appeared on screen, early 60s gray beard, sharp eyes, behind rimless glasses. He was sitting in what looked like a home office, books lining the walls behind him. Mrs. Chen, Mr. Webb, thank you for arranging this conversation. His English was perfect, accent barely noticeable. Victoria had expected someone who looked reckless, dangerous. Instead, Werner looked like someone's grandfather. Thank you for taking the time, Dr. Werner. I've reviewed the materials you sent. Your husband's research is remarkable. The primate trial results are promising, but I need to be very direct with you about what I can and cannot offer. Please. Your son has familial ALS with rapid progression. Based on the records, I estimate he has 6 months of meaningful quality of life remaining, perhaps less. The gene therapy you're developing might save him, but it's not ready for human application. Victoria's chest tightened. The primates show good efficacy, but concerning safety signals. The immune rejection rate is too high. We don't fully understand why some subjects respond and others reject. Until we do, administering this therapy to a child is extremely dangerous. More dangerous than letting him die. Werner leaned back in his chair. That depends on your definition of danger. The disease will kill him slowly, but predictably. The therapy might cure him, or it might kill him faster and more painfully than ALS would. Without more data, I cannot predict which outcome is more likely. Marcus spoke up. What would you need to feel comfortable proceeding? 3 more months of primate data minimum, better understanding of the rejection markers, and honestly, I would prefer to wait for FDA approval of Phase 1 trials. That typically takes 2 to 3 years, Victoria interrupted. Ethan doesn't have 2 to 3 years. I know, which is why I said I cannot help you through official channels. Werner's expression didn't change. However, if a patient came to me privately outside any formal trial structure asking for treatment based on compassionate grounds, I would evaluate that request individually. Victoria's pulse quickened. What would that evaluation involve? Complete medical workup at my facility. Genetic screening for rejection markers. Informed consent process that takes several days and involves multiple specialists explaining the risks. And a psychological evaluation to ensure the patient and family understand what they're agreeing to. And if we pass all those evaluations, then I would consider administering the therapy under strict monitoring conditions. Not as a trial participant, as a private patient receiving experimental treatment. The distinction is important for legal and ethical reasons. How much would this cost? The medical workup is 30,000 Swiss francs. The therapy itself, including all monitoring and supportive care for 6 months, is 200,000 francs. Total approximately 250,000 US dollars. Victoria didn't hesitate. When could we start? Mrs. Chen. Werner's voice hardened slightly. I need you to understand what you're asking. This therapy has a 16% rejection rate in primates. We don't know what that translates to in humans. It could be higher. Your son could die on my table. And if he does, there will be no recourse, no lawsuit, no compensation, just grief. I understand. Do you? Because in my experience, parents often say they understand, but don't truly process the reality until it's too late. Marcus leaned forward. Dr. Werner, I brought my daughter to you 5 years ago for treatment that had a 30% mortality rate. I understood then and I understand now. We're not asking you to guarantee success. We're asking for a chance. Werner studied them both through the screen. Very well. Send me Ethan's complete medical records. I'll review them with my team. If we determine he's a viable candidate, we'll schedule the evaluation process. But I make no promises beyond that. Thank you, Victoria said. When will you have an answer? 1 week. I'll contact you directly. The call ended. Victoria and Marcus sat in the dark study, the only light coming from the laptop screen. We're really doing this, Victoria said. We're exploring it. There's a difference. He's going to say yes, I can tell. And if he does, if Ethan goes through this and it doesn't work, if we fly him to Switzerland and he dies there instead of here. Victoria's voice broke. Then at least I tried everything. At least he knew I fought for him until the end. That won't make the grief easier. Nothing makes grief easier, but regret makes it unbearable, and I can't live with the regret of not trying. Marcus nodded slowly. Okay, then we wait for Werner's answer. The week crawled by. Victoria tried to maintain normalcy for Ethan therapy sessions, time with Sophie, family dinners he mostly couldn't eat. But every time her phone rang, her heart stopped. Dr. Kim noticed the change. You're distracted. What's going on? Just tired. Victoria, you're Ethan's mother and my patient's primary caregiver. If something's happening that affects his care, I need to know. Victoria met her gaze. If there was a treatment option that might cure him but had a significant risk of killing him instead, would you support trying it? Kim's expression went very still. What kind of treatment? Gene therapy, the kind we're developing through the foundation. Victoria, those trials are months away from human application. But what if they weren't? What if there was a way to access the therapy now outside official channels? Would you support that? Absolutely not. The safety data isn't complete. The risks are unknown. You'd be experimenting on your own child. Every treatment is an experiment the first time. No, approved treatments have gone through rigorous testing. What you're describing is reckless. Victoria stood. Thank you for your honesty. Where are you going? To make a reckless decision. She left before Kim could respond. On day 6, Werner called. I've reviewed Ethan's records with my team. We're willing to proceed with the evaluation process. How soon can you bring him to Switzerland? Victoria's hand shook. As soon as you can accommodate us. Next week. I'll have my assistant send travel arrangements and pre-evaluation materials. Mrs. Chen, I need to stress again. I understand the risks. We're coming. After she hung up, Victoria went to find Ethan. He was in the game room with Sophie, both of them working on some kind of elaborate art project that involved way too much glitter. Ethan, can I talk to you for a minute alone? Sophie looked at Marcus, who'd appeared in the doorway. She gathered her supplies. I'll go get a snack. Once they were gone, Victoria sat beside her son. How would you feel about taking a trip? Ethan looked suspicious. What kind of trip? To Switzerland. To see a doctor who might be able to help you. Another doctor, Mom. I've seen like 100 doctors. This one is different. He's been working on a treatment that might actually make you better. Ethan's eyes widened. Really better. Not just slower dying. The question broke her heart. Maybe. But it's risky. There's a chance it could make things worse instead of better. How much worse? Victoria took a breath. It could kill you. Faster than the ALS would. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. What are the chances it works? We don't know exactly. In animals, about 75% got better. But you're not an animal. It might be different. So 3 out of 4 chance it helps, approximately. And if I don't do it, then we keep doing what we're doing now. Managing symptoms. Making you comfortable. Until I die. Yes. Ethan looked at his hands. They were trembling slightly, the tremor that never stopped anymore. Do you want me to do it? I want you to have a choice. This is your body. Your life. Whatever you decide, I'll support. But if it was you, what would you choose? Victoria thought about David spending his final months connected to machines, unable to speak or move or do anything except exist. She thought about Ethan's question weeks ago about whether dying hurts. I would try the treatment, because I'd rather fight and lose than surrender without trying. Then that's what I want too. Ethan, you need to understand. Mom, I'm 9, not stupid. I know what might kill me means. I also know what definitely dying means. And I'd rather maybe die trying to live than definitely die doing nothing. Victoria pulled him close, this impossibly brave boy who'd faced more in 9 years than most people faced in a lifetime. Okay, we'll go to Switzerland. Together. Can Marcus and Sophie come? I don't know. Maybe. I want them there. Their family too. The words made Victoria's throat close. I'll ask. That night, she called Marcus. We're going to Switzerland next week. Ethan wants you and Sophie there. Sophie has school. I know. I'm not asking you to come. I'm just telling you what Ethan wants. The decision is yours. Marcus was quiet for so long, she thought the call had dropped. Then, how long would we be gone? The evaluation takes a week. If Werner approves treatment, we'd stay for 6 months of monitoring. 6 months. Sophie would miss half a school year. Yes. And if I say no, then you say no. Ethan will understand. Another long silence. Let me talk to Sophie. He called back an hour later. We're coming. Sophie says if Ethan's fighting for his life, she wants to be there. I explained it means missing school, leaving her friends living in a foreign country for months. She said friends can wait. Ethan can't. Victoria felt tears burning her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We don't know how this ends. No, but we'll find out together. The next 5 days were a blur of preparation. Victoria arranged for indefinite leave from Chen Industries. Marcus coordinated with Sophie's school to set up remote learning. Dr. Kim was furious when she found out refusing to provide a referral letter until Rahman intervened and wrote one himself. Morse called and said if Victoria went through with this, the foundation couldn't be associated with it. Victoria accepted that. Some things mattered more than institutional support. They flew to Zurich on a cold Tuesday morning, just the 4 of them in the private jet Victoria had chartered. Ethan slept most of the flight, the BiPAP humming softly. Sophie sat beside him doing homework. Marcus and Victoria sat across from each other, not talking, just being present. Werner's facility was in the mountains outside Zurich, a modern building that looked more like a high-end resort than a hospital. He met them personally in the lobby. Mrs. Chen, Mr. Webb, this must be Ethan and Sophie. He shook everyone's hands, his grip firm but gentle when he reached Ethan. How was your flight, young man? Long and boring. Werner smiled. I imagine. Well, we'll try to make your stay here more interesting. Come, let me show you around. The facility was impressive. Private rooms with mountain views. A therapy gym that looked like something from a sports training center. A game room specifically designed for patients with limited mobility. Ethan, you'll be staying in room 304. It has the best view of the Alps. Sophie, we've arranged a guest suite next door for you and your father. Mrs. Chen, your suite is across the hall. He led them to a conference room. Now let's discuss what the next week looks like. For the next hour, Werner outlined the evaluation process. Genetic testing, neurological assessments, psychological evaluations, MRI and CT scans, blood work. So many tests that Ethan's eyes glazed over. This sounds like a lot, the boy said. It is. But we need to understand your body completely before we can make a treatment decision. Think of it like a pilot doing pre-flight checks. Boring but necessary. Will it hurt? Some of it might be uncomfortable, but we'll do everything we can to minimize pain. And you can stop any test at any time. You're in control here. Ethan looked at his mother. She nodded. It's your choice. Okay, I'll do the tests. Werner smiled. Excellent. We start tomorrow morning. For now, get settled. Rest. Explore the facility. Dinner is at 6 in the dining hall, or we can bring food to your room if you prefer. After he left, they separated to their rooms. Victoria helped Ethan get settled, hooking up his BiPAP to the European power converter, arranging his medications in the bathroom. Mom. Yeah, baby. I'm scared. Victoria sat beside him on the bed. Me too. Really? You don't seem scared. I'm terrified, but I'm also hopeful. Both things can be true at the same time. What if the tests show I can't do the treatment? Then we go home and keep fighting a different way. And if they show I can, but it doesn't work, then at least we tried. Ethan leaned against her. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. So much. They sat like that as the sun set over the Alps, painting the mountains in shades of gold and pink and purple. And Victoria thought about how strange it was that the most beautiful views often appeared in the hardest moments. The testing began at 8 a.m. the next morning. Victoria sat through every evaluation, watching doctors poke and scan and measure her son with clinical precision. Ethan was brave, barely complaining, even when procedures ran long or equipment pressed uncomfortably against his thin frame. On day 3, Werner pulled Victoria aside. The genetic screening shows Ethan has markers that correlate with positive treatment response. That's good news. And the bad news? He also has one marker associated with increased rejection risk. It's not a deal breaker, but it raises his risk profile. By how much? From 16% to approximately 22% chance of serious immune complications. 1 in 5. Victoria's mind raced through the math. 78% chance he'd be okay. 22% chance he'd die. What would you do if he was your son? Werner removed his glasses, cleaned them carefully. I would ask myself what kind of life he has without treatment versus what quality of life he might have if it works. ALS is not a gentle death, Mrs. Chen. It's slow suffocation, progressive paralysis, eventual loss of all voluntary movement. If the treatment works, Ethan could have decades of healthy life. If it fails, his death would likely be faster, but potentially more traumatic. That's not an answer. Because there is no good answer, only the choice you can live with. Victoria looked through the window into the testing room where Ethan was having his reflexes checked. He was laughing at something the technician said, his smile bright despite everything. When will we know if he's approved for treatment? 2 more days of evaluation, then my team meets to discuss. You'll have our answer by Monday. Those 2 days felt like 2 years. Victoria barely slept, spending nights in the facility's library, reading everything she could find about gene therapy complications and success rates. Marcus found her there at 3 a.m. on Saturday. You need to sleep. I need to understand what we're risking. You already do. Reading the same articles again won't change the facts. He sat beside her. Sophie asked me tonight if Ethan was going to die. What did you tell her? The truth. That I don't know, that we're doing everything we can, that sometimes trying your best still isn't enough. Marcus paused. She said that's okay, that not knowing is better than not trying. She's wise beyond her years. She learned it the hard way, same as Ethan. They sat in silence, surrounded by medical journals. Neither of them wanted to read anymore. Whatever Werner decides on Monday, Marcus said finally. We've already done the right thing. We gave Ethan a choice. We fought for him. That matters regardless of the outcome. Does it? If he dies because of a choice I helped him make, then he dies having tried to live. There are worse ways to go. Victoria wanted to believe that. Wanted to find comfort in the idea that effort mattered even when results didn't. But all she could see was her son's face when he laughed, and all she could think was how much she'd give to keep that laugh alive. Monday morning came with clear skies and devastating clarity. Werner called them to his office at 10 a.m. Ethan came too, insisting he had a right to hear this directly. We've completed our evaluation, Werner began. Ethan is a viable candidate for treatment. His markers are acceptable. His overall health is stable enough to withstand the procedure. And psychologically, he demonstrates clear understanding of the risks and commitment to the process. Victoria's heart hammered. So you'll do it? I will, with conditions. Name them. First, you sign comprehensive waivers acknowledging all risks. Second, You commit to the full 6-month monitoring protocol, regardless of outcome. Third, if complications arise, you follow my medical judgment without question. This includes potentially stopping treatment if I determine it's causing more harm than good. Agreed. Werner turned to Ethan. Young man, this is your last chance to change your mind. Once we start, we can't undo it. Do you understand? Ethan's voice was steady. I understand, and I want to try. Very well. We'll schedule the procedure for Thursday. That gives you 3 days to rest and prepare. I'll have my team brief you on exactly what to expect. After they left Werner's office, Ethan turned to Victoria. We're really doing this. We're really doing this. I'm scared, Mom. Me too, baby. Me too. But when Ethan looked at her, his eyes held something she hadn't seen in months. Not just fear, not just resignation. Hope. And whatever happened on Thursday, whatever the outcome, at least they'd given him that. At least he'd face this fight knowing he wasn't alone. That sometimes love, even when it couldn't guarantee victory, could still give you the courage to try.